From a cargo ship hitting a house to a tourist boat hitting a dock, here are 10 boat accidents that have been filmed. Imagine that you are quietly sitting on your balcony, in a house by the water, when suddenly you see a boat coming towards you. What a nightmare. But don't worry, this kind of accident rarely happens. However, one wonders what could have happened to the captain of this cargo ship that destroyed a villa built on the shore of the Bosphorus in Istanbul. It happened in 2018. The Vita Spirit, a 225-meter-long Maltese freighter, had left Egypt and was heading for Ukraine. It was crossing the strait when all of a sudden it deviated from its course and ended up in this historic villa dating back to the 19th century. The images are worthy of a movie scene. In this video, we can see the ship heading directly towards the building and then hitting it head-on, under the helpless gaze of the people watching the scene. The accident probably occurred because of a technical problem, probably a rudder jam, which made it impossible to control the boat. The results: extensive damage to this wooden house, which dates from the Ottoman period, and interrupted maritime traffic. But fortunately, there were no victims after this crazy accident. We have all heard of shipwrecks, sunken boats, and other such accidents. But did you know that sometimes boats can be sunk voluntarily by man? A few months ago, the video of the sinking of a large ship, the Stellar Banner, was widely viewed on the internet. The boat, a very large ore carrier, or VLOC, for Very Large Ore Carrier, was scuttled off the Brazilian coast. Why was it scuttled? Well, the boat had run aground in February and its condition did not bode well after being refloated. The Stellar Banner had been chartered to transport iron from Brazil to China, but after leaving a sea terminal with more than 270,000 tons of iron ore on board, the ship suffered hull damage. Indeed, it was perforated in a few places and presented the risk of spilling all its fuel oil. For this reason, the VLOC finally ran aground voluntarily, 100 kilometers from the coast, to prevent it from sinking. The iron cargo could have ended up in the bottom of the sea, but fortunately, 145,000 tons could be saved thanks to tugboats. And of course, all crew members could be evacuated. As for the Stellar Banner, well, there was no other solution than to scuttle her, as her structure had been classified as a general average. The event thus took place more than 3 months after the grounding of the boat, 150 kilometers from the Brazilian coast. The video of this scuttling is really impressive. Well, it's not every day that a boat is voluntarily sunk. Do you like this video? Then, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all notifications and not miss anything of our next publications. Let's keep going. While the Stellar Banner may have been intentionally grounded off the coast of Brazil to prevent it from sinking, the Mole Comfort, a 316 meters long container ship, was not so lucky. What happened then? On June 17, 2013, this ship carrying more than 4,300 containers and heading from Singapore to Saudi Arabia broke in two in the middle of the Indian Ocean, while it was 370 kilometers off the coast of Yemen. The accident occurred after a crack appeared in the hull, probably due to the swell, which caused the 26 crew members to abandon the boat. A long but slow journey will then begin for the two parts of the boat which are drifting gently in the ocean, with their containers and fuel oil. 10 days later, the stern part sank, releasing many containers into the Indian Ocean. Nowadays, the wreck of this stern part lies at a depth of 4,000 meters. As for the bow section, well, it has suffered the same fate, despite attempts to tow it. Having caught fire, this part finally sank in turn after several weeks, at a depth of 3,000 meters. Of course, as you know, a disaster of this kind is not without consequences for the environment. You can therefore imagine the extent of the damage this accident caused. And then, with containers floating on the surface of the water, the boats that were sailing on the ocean ran a big risk. In short, the Mole Comfort accident is among the worst shipwrecks in maritime history. This suggests that boats must be regularly overhauled and maintained to avoid this kind of disaster. Moreover, following this accident, the central part of the hulls of the 6 sister ships of the Mole Comfort was quickly reinforced. The Galapagos Islands. With their white sand and turquoise waters, the archipelago has something to make sea lovers dream. But did you know that this paradise archipelago, located in the Pacific Ocean off the equator, narrowly avoided a real environmental catastrophe when a boat loaded with 2,300 liters of diesel sank in a port? This happened in December 2019, on the island of San Cristobal. While loading a container, a crane fell on the barge. The barge capsized and sank with 600 gallons of diesel fuel on board. As a result, 2,300 liters of diesel spilled into the sea, forming a slick that the Ecuadorian authorities were quick to control in order to minimize environmental risks. Authorities and NGOs rolled up their sleeves to put up containment barriers and absorbent rags to recover all this diesel and spare this archipelago with its fragile ecosystem. The Galapagos could have been threatened by an oil spill, but fortunately, the accident is now a distant memory. For many of us, the year 2020 has been synonymous with an unprecedented health crisis. And how? No more travel, no more dream vacations, and no more cruises either. The COVID-19 pandemic will have taken everything, including the maritime sector. Did you know that because of this virus, many cruise ships, banned from sailing, found themselves unemployed, finding nothing and no one to carry on board? And what happened to them? Take a look at this. This is happening in Aliağa, Turkey. Many boats are being taken to what will be their final resting place. On this wharf, known as the graveyard of ships, many workers work on recycling these ships by dismantling them for the sale of scrap metal, steel, and other materials deemed useful. While 2020 has been a dark time for the cruise industry, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a banner year for the recycling industry. A blessing in disguise, as they say. Who said that accidents only happen on the roads or in the sky? Well, even ships can be responsible for silly accidents sometimes, as was the case with this container ship that sank in a container terminal in the port of Busan in South Korea. The Milano Bridge had just arrived at the port, after a long stay at sea that began in China. This arrival could have gone well if the ship had not hit a large gantry crane at the port terminal when it docked. But what happened then? Well, it seems that a technical problem is behind this accident. The tugboat present at the stern would not have been able to slow down the boat, whose stern went to hit the gantry, which then collapsed on the boat. Other minor damage would have been observed on 2 other gantry cranes and on another container ship. But tell me, what can we expect when a ship of more than 360 meters, unable to slow down, sweeps a whole section of the terminal? Fortunately, this accident did not cause any casualties, except for a slightly injured man working as a gantry crane operator. What happens when 2 boats collide? It's a disaster, you'll tell me. Let me tell you a story that took place in 2010 in the Antarctic Ocean off the coast of Australia. An incident took place between 3 Japanese whalers and an NGO called Sea Shepherd. This NGO militates for the protection of ecosystems and the defense of marine animals, and precisely that day, it was in Antarctica for a very special mission, to prevent Japanese whalers from whaling. And to carry out this mission, the NGO had 3 boats at its disposal, including the 80 Gill, a trimaran it had just purchased. Except that no one knew that this boat was going to live its last hours at sea that day. What happened? Well, it collided with one of the Japanese ships, the Shonan Maru II. Presumably, the 2 captains would have been unable to avoid the collision, and as a result of this accident, the 80 Gill broke in 2 on impact and 1/2 eventually sank. Luckily, the crew members were rescued. This story could have ended this way, but no, because according to the NGO, this accident had been deliberately provoked. The Japanese ship would have accelerated and sailed straight to the 80 Gill, which, unfortunately, did not wait front of the imposing boat. This case has created a stir. The Japanese authorities, who claim that whaling is a scientific fishery, and NGO activists have been blaming each other over and over again about this collision. Unfortunately, the investigation carried out following this unfortunate incident could not reveal who was responsible. Having a confrontation with someone is not at all pleasant, but what to say when 2 parties are constantly opposing each other, and this in the open sea? In February 2013, 3 years after the collision between the 80 Gill and the Shonan Maru II, which had caused much ink to flow, a new accident occurred between the Japanese and Sea Shepherd environmental activists. A Japanese factory ship, the Nishin Maru, voluntarily collided with boats of the NGO that were there to prevent whaling. During this attack, judged violent by the NGO, one of its boats, the Bob Barker, was hit several times by the Japanese ship, which caused a lot of damage, the destruction of masts and radar, a power cut, and to top it all off, the poor boat was even sandwiched between the Japanese ship and a South Korean oil tanker. The latter was restocking the Nishin Maru with fuel and had to lose a lifeboat during this spectacular confrontation. But fortunately, none of the crew was injured. Decidedly, the stories between the whalers and the defenders of marine animals are not over yet. Have you ever seen 2 boats collide in the harbor? It surprises you, doesn't it? Certainly, it is an accident that rarely happens. A rare accident, yes, but not impossible. Not so long ago, in 2018, 2 container ships collided in the port of Karachi, Pakistan. One of them was trying to regain its berth when it collided with the second ship, already at the quayside, causing many containers to fall into the water. Some were even completely open. Of course, all these containers had to be urgently stowed away instead of being left to float, which was far from easy. This special stowage operation even blocked traffic in the port and port facilities for several hours. Wow! Have you always dreamed of taking a cruise aboard a magnificent liner? Certainly, it is one of the most beautiful adventures you can live, at least once in your life. But it has to have a happy ending and there must be no incidents or panic on board, like what happened in 2019 on the MSC Opera. This cruise ship, which sailed on the Giudecca Canal in Venice, Italy, had a memorable misadventure for its passengers and those on the River Countess, another tourist ship. What happened? Well, while trying to moor, this gigantic boat hit not only the dock but also the second boat. Wrong maneuver or clumsiness of the captain? Neither one nor the other. The boat suffered an engine failure that prevented it from slowing down, making it out of control. Even the tugboats, which were intended to accompany it to the dock, were unable to slow it down, after a break in the cables. The atmosphere of panic was palpable, however, apart from 4 minor injuries, there were no casualties. Phew. More fear than pain. It was 10 spectacular boat accidents. Which ones impressed you the most? Leave us your answers in the comments.